Howdy hackers and welcome to FairLight TV. This time we will not dive into technology. Well, a little bit, but this is something I've been dwelling over quite a few weeks, and finally we managed to put together a package which includes just everything I wanted from this. This time we will be talking about the FairLight legendary intro. So now we are decrunching. If there is anything at all that is sort of the tune or the theme for my life, this is it. The FairLight legendary intro, coded in 1987 by Kresten Krab Torup, whom you know as Voodoo. He joined very early, I would say in 1987. This is before my time. I'm sort of a noob. I only joined FairLight in December 88. So Kresten was already sort of fading out of the scene at the time. So when I joined, so we haven't met and we've only chatted a few times, and yeah, so this is sort of Kresten's legacy, I would say, on the scene. If people remember anything he did, this is probably the one piece that he would be remembered for. So this intro has been used, I would say, almost 200 times. I'm sure some of you could do a scan of CSDB and other sources and count the number of times it's been used on the C64, but it's been used a lot. I still love it. I say like 98% of people who've seen it also like it a lot, and a number of people like me would have it as one of the themes of their youth, because they played FairLight cracks and they've seen this every time they booted the games. So Kresten, this is an awesome piece of art. It should be in a museum. It should be running 24/7 on screens, showing what you left behind on the C64 scene. Very well done. The other contributors to what you see on the screen or hear from the speakers, yeah, well, I would say that the second thing we need to mention here is Dave M. Hanlon. Dave M. Hanlon. Dave is the author of the music. So this is ripped from the game Druid 2. If you compare the original with this one, you would notice, or if you have a skilled music ear, which I don't, but a number of people who are skilled musicians could hear a difference. And the reason was that when this was ripped, it was also minimized, and insignificant parts that wasted a bit of the memory were removed. So there is a little bit of fiddling down on the O2 area, which is what I think is the source of the difference. I know that Kingfisher of Triad has done like a proper rip, and I probably the one that you would listen to if you listen to one of the high voltage archives for the Druid 2 tune. Okay, so Dave, this is an absolute masterpiece, and it's like 250 hex bytes long, everything, and it takes basically like 1 or 2 raster lines. It's super fast, it's super compact, and it's absolutely epic. The other part, which is also from Druid 2, is the font. That one is done by D&T Carter, or at least he is credited for graphics alongside Doc. But I think he was the one that did the font, as far as we know. So let that be a guess. But Dean, super nice. So that's all you hear and all you see. A number of additional people have been contributing to making this the legendary intro. Fredrik Karl, whom you know as Gollum, he took Voodoo's intro and squeezed it into something that was a lot smaller. And then he also added the original intro maker that we used for adding intros to the games when we did everything natively on the C64. So on the 64, you have an intro maker, you write your scroller, and then you type the lines and all of that, and then you enter the parameters such as the start address, and then you add the executable file, it adds the intro, and it saves the executable file including the intro. So that was the convenient way to do it back in the 80s and 90s. So that's how we did it. And Fredrik also added a few smart things to the intro maker, which made it a bit more difficult for us later on. But so Fredrik was a keen sucker for actually optimizing every living daylight byte out of the end result. So what he did was he counted the characters in, or he made a note of all the characters represented in the scroller, and removed the characters from the font if they weren't used. So let's say you didn't use like a Z. Then he cleaned out the Z, only to make the end result like an 8 bytes shorter. And if you do that, and if you are consistent, your crack will be shorter than everybody else's, because you have really walked the extra mile to ensure that your crack is shorter than everybody else. So one of the other things was that the character O and the number 0, they were the same in the original font. So Gollum, producing the end result, replaced all the zeros with O, or the other way around. I don't really remember, but at least either 0 or O are not represented in the font represented in the scroller. Because they are replaced. Okay, so that was how we did it in the 80s and the 90s. Back now to the modern days, me, Pontus Berg, also known as Bacchus. I think that was in the beginning of the video, as I recall. Well, anyway, and James Pitcher, whom you know as Pitcher. We reassembled this and did everything we could to make like a really solid reassembly of it, so it should be able to kind of assemble to any location and all of that, and it should still work. So credits to us for that. The original doesn't really work well on NTSC, so Peter Eliasson, Trasher, had a few night sessions where he ensured that this works well on both PAL and NTSC, or at least one of the NTSC versions. I think it's sort of the newer NTSC. Nobody uses NTSC, so, well, except Jason, our friend who we worked with alternate reality, of course. But everybody else is using PAL, so... but at least this one now works solidly also in NTSC. Yeah, one of the NTSC modes. There has been a requirement from my own personal side to add exclamation marks, because that wasn't inside the original font. So TNG, Johan Nordström, did a few changes to the font. So when you see this now, it will probably be able to also include the exclamation mark. There has been a number of versions of this. I know X-Rated did their own blasphemy version of it, and I know that Censor did an intro that was sort of the same. But yeah, let's not talk about the blasphemy version, but our own derivative work. Magnus Sjöberg, Pantaloon, did a version of the intro which extended all the way up into the borders. Both all the bars and also the scroller, as I remember. I think we only used it once. It's less convenient than the version I normally use, so I will stick to the one that works. And also his version isn't NTSC fixed. So thanks to Magnus for that. I have done two derivative versions. I did one for alternate reality the city, and I did one for alternate reality the dungeon. Both of those games feature a spaceship in their kind of video-esque intros, and I extracted that and I put that rather than the green bar that goes back and forth, because you need to kind of circle that around the FairLight logo. I needed to remove the top bar, the text string, so I had enough space for the height of the spaceship, so I can change the priority of the sprites when it's turning. And then I also needed to open the border on the upper and lower border to make it have all the space it needs to circle and be visible all the time. I should also mention, of course, the absolutely legendary intros. The intro. No, of course, the logo. Sorry about that. The legendary logo. I think Kristen did that. I would find it difficult to believe that anybody else did that. So, and we should actually take a bit of extra look on that. Like here, so again, this is fine. Using Vice, I can freeze the intro at any given time. So now I'm pausing it. Okay, now I will show you one of the dirty details of this intro that cannot be unseen. If you've seen it before, you see it every time, and once you've seen it, you cannot unsee it. So prepare, or go somewhere else and don't look for a minute of this video, because this cannot be unseen. If you want to not have it spoiled, then bear with me and like keep your eyes closed. I will do this and you can start listening again. So the intro or the logo here is made out of characters, and the characters would have 3 colors, including, and then of course the background color, which, so DO21 is black here. One color is from DO22 and one color is from DO23, and the other one is from the color memory of D800. But take a look at the color bar and the colors of the logo. The color bar, the green one, is actually not one of those splits that were very common back then. It's a sprite. It's actually 7 sprites, but it's a set of sprites with a common content that is circulated. So you set the priority of the sprites to make it go behind and in front of the logo. But there is a bug in the Vic. I mean, there are loads of bugs, but one that is actually kind of a fault. If you look at the bar here by the T, you can follow the dark red from the bottom of the T, and then when it reaches the the bar, it's disappearing. And the reason is that you can change the priority of the sprite to be behind or in front of characters. But there is an issue. It will always be in front of the DO23 color. So you cannot force sprites to go behind DO23 color. Have a look. So suddenly here, like at the G and the R and the A here, there is suddenly a little gap. And that gap is the dark red that would be on the horizontal bar. But given that the sprite bar is now in front of that red color, it will look like a little gap between the bar and the rest of the logo. This is something you can never unsee. Once you've seen it, you see it forever. And for those of you who are now interested in continuing listening, but you haven't listened because you didn't want to be taking part of this spoiler, I will now invite you back to the intro, and we will never talk about this again. Okay, so back from watching the intro and the spoiler. Were you one of those who didn't listen, or you took part of the spoiler? You didn't, you? Yeah, so now you know. And those who know, they know. From now on, I will have the opportunity of talking to a number of people who were actually involved in the production of parts of this intro. The first person I have the great honor of talking to is Dave M. Hanlon. So let's go over to a video meeting I had with Dave a few minutes ago, and I'll share with you. Dave M. Hanlon. So we are here, Pontus Bacchus Bay, with Dave M. Hanlon, the legendary composer of the tune to Druid 2, which we humbly nicked and used in the legendary intro that we just talked about. So Dave, again, I'm very humbled that you would participate in this, and I'm looking forward to the little chat with you. Yeah, let's start by introducing you, and you do it better than I do. So,
well, yeah. So thanks for reaching out, and yeah, it's also great to be here as well. I mean, I think, as you said, I'm David Hanlon, so I work with Andrew Bailey on the Druid games originally, and then a few things after that. But yeah, that was my little contribution, and then was quite similarly humbled and shocked to see that it was used, and so many people seem to enjoy it. So yeah, really amazed.
We have collaborated into making it sort of a legendary tune that people have as sort of their, say, like a theme tune for their youth. I've heard that a number of times, so it's not just me saying it. It's actually true for a number of people, including myself, I must say. So let's start by like the formality here. I mean, you are a musician. Do you have any classical training of it, and what instruments are you playing and all of that?
No, I mean, so originally I self-taught on keyboard, and then later guitar and bass, but nothing classically trained or anything. It was just something I did as a hobby, really.
Well, in Sweden, we have the opportunity of this kommunala musikskolan. So everybody interested in an instrument can stay an additional hour after school and practice one day a week. So I guess that's sort of what made ABBA great, and a few of the other bands we had from Sweden as well. So, but I mean, that's real life music. But moving into sort of computer music, how did you drift into that? What kind of additional computer music did you do before the games that you did for Firebird?
So again, there was nothing really at the time. I mean, for me, it was more. I was beginning to get an interest in synthesizers, and actually, I'm struggling to remember if I had I think it possibly a Roland SH-101. And I'm trying to remember now. It's such a long time ago. The timing of it, but it had a basic step sequencer, and so I might have been playing around with that. My uncle actually used to repair, these sort of Hammond organs and that sort of thing.
Oh, I love the sound of those.
Yeah, and at the time there was quite a business in the UK for these big sort of multi-manual things, and he repaired them. So obviously got an interest in keyboarding through that. And for really the computing side of things was when Andrew asked if I would do some music, because I mean, he knew I played a little bit, and we were classmates at school, and so he pretty much set everything up on the C64, the software, and honestly, I couldn't even tell you what that was, but yeah, and just got that going. So there was very little before, and when I started using that was actually played with a plastic keyboard overlay. So just sitting it on the keyboard and trying to code it in that way, and then I suppose a few evenings tweaking and playing with sounds. As you know, you've got various waves that you can play with on these things.
Well, Andrew was the one doing the music routine, and you typed it in like notes.
Yes. So essentially, there was a musical editor, and as I said, I apologize. I really cannot remember what the make was, but he took that. I mean, he was the brains of it all. So I mean, technically, he then took that and coded it in. So and the sounds and that, I think he took whatever this package generated, and then that got applied into the game.
Okay, so I mean, he must have taken whatever you produced in that and then typed it in, like because everything is like numbers. That's not a standard routine by any means. That's nobody using a standard thing could make something that compact. It's absolutely technically brilliant. The reason we used it because it was so small. It's like I would say under 300 decimal bytes. Player, tabs, and all the sounds, everything is under 300 bytes, which is, well, I mean, the first init of any tune with any other system would be 20 times bigger than that. So it's absolutely technically amazing.
Well, I've got to say, I mean, Andrew was always very clever at school, and I massively admire his abilities then and since. And at the time, I didn't code myself, so I have learned since. But at the time, I just didn't really have it. I'll be honest, I didn't have any interest in the coding side of things or what he did with it. But yeah, I'll take your word that that's what it was. I do remember that we had very little space for things. I mean, even later when we were doing things with the Amiga, and you were actually able to use sound samples, it was very little space available for anything. We had to try and get as much as we could in with as low bandwidth as we could.
Right. Well, I mean, you have two aspects. One is the actual footprint in memory, and the other is the raster line, or the number of like the time it uses per screen, because you need update the scroller, and you need to update the sensing the joystick, and all updating the AI for the opponents and all of those. So I think you would normally, musician tends to be given that, well, you can use this. It has to be super nice, and you can play it for 3 hours and people wouldn't be bored. And and then it needs to take like 3 raster lines, and these are basically impossible requirements. And I'm sure you had something like that, and I must say it was done super nice, and it's so super nice. So on the C64, I mean, you were responsible for Druid 1, Druid 2, and Warlock, as I have looked up.
I don't remember the third one, so I'm pretty sure I remember just 2 on
okay. That is a sort of a reference from GameBase 64. That might be, it looked very much like Druid, so it looked like somebody kind of took Druid, so it might not even be an official release. So let's just be a bit vague on that.
Or it could be that it was renamed for the US, of course, because there were things that were done. So later on, we did Dragon's Breath in the UK, but I think it was called Dragon's Lord in the US.
Okay.
So that's a possibility. But actually, I didn't know the name of that. So that would be through Firebird, wouldn't it?
Yep. So I just these are the references to your name in GameBase 64, which is one of the collections of all the releases ever released on the platform.
I will have to Google it.
So,
or ask Andrew.
But your C64 career is rather short. I mean, 3 games seems to be a rather small thing, and but you moved into doing a little bit for Bullfrog and stuff on the Amiga, right?
Yeah, that's right. So, as I said, originally it was just something that I did as a favour to Andrew. I mean, he was a friend of mine, just asked would I just put a tune together, and I had a go. There was never any attention to do music as a sort of career or gaming. So anything really pretty much involved Andrew. And then we did later. We did collaborate on. We were building a thing called A Drum for the Amiga. Again, Andrew coded, and I helped sort of just test it and use it. And I happened to have a DX7 Yamaha keyboard with MIDI, so that was useful for testing purposes. We demonstrated that at Olympia in London, and got some interest from Taurus, who that was the company that Les, Edgar, and Peter Molyneux founded before Bullfrog. And so, because that was a business company, they didn't want to have the same name for gaming, so we helped name Bullfrog Productions, and that was actually the first title they released. Was A Drum for the Amiga, and then I kind of got a job there. A very grand title of sales manager, but really it was a gopher. And then they did a Druid conversion onto Amiga, and then I did some different music for that, which I don't think people liked. But and then I think they had a game they called Fusion. And that was another one where you had like about that much memory. So it was practically a repeating loop, very, very, very tiny.
And pardon my ignorance here, but Bullfrog, were they the company behind Populous?
That's correct, yeah. So I did the sound, in-game sound for Populous. And in fact, we did that, we designed that using A Drum. So that was another routine that Andrew had created. And
A Drum, we are not talking a sequencer. It's like a tool for producing music for the Amiga. So
that's right. Yeah, there were a number of sales of it, and we actually used it for our own tool. So that was also what was used to produce the Dragon's Breath game as well. So there was a bit of music for that, and I think probably that was my last computer game music until Golem Crusades, which was something Andrew was playing with recently. Okay. I say more recently, about 11 years ago, but and then
that's really recent from where we are talking. So
pretty much, yes. Yeah.
It's almost like yesterday.
Yes, I was actually able to use more modern equipment for that. Native Instruments is my favorite. So really, again, very little, because it was never something that I was actively after chasing, So, and actually, as I said earlier, really very surprised to see that anybody, found it good to listen to. So, and all the remixes, it's been just amazing looking at all the remixes that I've seen.
Yeah. I mean, the remixes on Qued, I think there are like 20 or 30 of them. So it really caught on. And well, and when you're describing the context you were in, and the context I know from myself, is that we didn't have any software houses in Sweden at the time. We had like one that did 2 games and then died off, whereas you had a living software industry. So the talented people in the UK were sucked up by the industry, providing content or material for games, whereas all of us turned on to the dark side, cracking and doing that. So yeah, I wonder what Sweden would have been like if we had like 2 or 3 software houses here. That could have been interesting, but yeah, that's not what happened. So yeah, what was kind of the deal? You indicated before that the remuneration for your contribution to those games were not that significant, and you were even screwed on the payment.
Yeah, so I think well, it's a very long and involved history. So when Bullfrog produced Populous, that obviously went to EA.
Yeah.
But before that happened, they actually got so they were selling CAD software and an early database program, and they sold it to a company in America, who then, and actually part of my job there was arranging for packaging and things to be made, and getting everything built up, discs assembled, and all the hundreds of these things shipped off to the States. And then what happened was they didn't pay the bill. So essentially, Taurus had to go bust, and I lost my job. So, but because the people, Peter Molyneux, Kevin Donkin, Glenn Corpez, Les, they were working for nothing, and then they finally hit success with Populous, but by which time I was long gone. But because Taurus was the one that owed us the money for Adrum, we didn't get paid there. And then later on, Palace Software did the same thing with Dragon's Breath. They went bust not long after selling it. So I mean, to be fair, I don't know that it made a lot of money for them either. So, but
Palace
I think
was Cauldron, right?
yeah, I think so. I can't remember the titles now.
Yes, I'm pretty sure. I cracked Cauldron 2 because it was an impossible game, and I made the super trainer that you can hold the key, and then you can use the joystick and reposition this stupid pumpkin to a more convenient location, and then you would let go of the key, and it would land there.
Very clever. Yeah, they were based. I remember going to see them in London. Some funny backstreet and up some stairs, but yeah, they owed us some money as well. So, and it was about that time, I have to be honest, I thought, well, you know what, this business just isn't, because Andy and I were looking to go into games making ourselves, you see, and he was just finishing university, and in the end, he decided to go to Australia, where I'm trying to think, Tantalus, I think, was the company originally, and then and I went my way. So at that point, of course, not having someone in the business who needed music, that's pretty much where it ended.
It's a bit sad. I mean, that's also kind of an immature business where a number of people are kind of Klondike, seeing the opportunity, and like a Klondike, not everybody is getting paid. A number of people are kind of starving to death in the process, which is really sad because there was a lot of talent that could have been tapped better, but it wasn't.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I look back at it, it's one of those things. The exceeding irony of it is the company that I work for now, I came out of, I mean, I've been there 20 years now. It's up in Guildford. And I walked out of my office, it was some years ago. I walked out of my office one day to see Peter Molyneux walking into the building opposite. And Lionhead had taken up the lease there before they went. So I actually used to see him quite a lot across the street.
Right.
Which was quite amusing. So not much to speak to.
You didn't remind anybody that there is a bit of money that would come your way eventually.
Oh, I don't know. I think, to be honest with you, so much water had gone under bridges by then that I did have a couple of conversations with him, and it's nice to speak to him, and Kevin Donkin actually I've seen since. But yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, I've had success in other things, so
buy me
I
lunch and we'll call it even.
Yes, yeah. I mean, obviously, I don't know what would have happened without your crack tune usage. I mean, I suspect I'd probably be in obscurity by now.
No, you shouldn't. It's still super epic. I would find it difficult to play the game and then listen to it for hours and hours and hours. But it might be a bit too repetitive after a while. But I think I've heard it more times than you have. I'm pretty sure of that. So.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Right. I mean, so, you are still doing music. I mean, I see the drum set behind you. So and I guess you're doing live music then, because that looks very analog to me.
Well, yes. So this studio was built because I'm in a live band. I like playing live music. So apart from obviously COVID stopped us for the last year.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're hoping to get back out again. We've got some gigs lined up from September onwards, some open air stuff. So I play bass now. I have played keyboard as well, but more bass. That seems to have settled on that. So,
and the name of the band, I mean, you have to ensure, or is there a link to a homepage where we can see your gigs coming up, so we can share a bit of marketing for that?
Maybe. I mean, it's not something that we do professionally. It's just something that we do for fun. So we're called Too Much Stuff, but there is another one in America. So if you hit that up, you'll probably find the American one. Yeah. Well, I shall have to drop you a line when we're playing next, and see what you think. But yeah, so the drums are my friend Colin from work. He's the drummer. We've got a couple, Dave and Helen, on guitar and vocals, and another Dave. So there's actually 3 Daves in the band, which can get a little bit confusing when someone says, Dave, can you? Yeah, and we all look at the same time.
It could be convenient as well, because it's very easy to remember the names.
Yes, that's it. There is a Monty Python sketch where everybody's called Bruce, if I remember correctly, that is very similar.
All right. So what about the C64? Any contact or relation or getting in touch with that at all in any form whatsoever?
Not really. I mean, sadly, not something that, as I said, I was never technically that into it. So, practically I only got one originally because of doing the music for Andy. Yeah. And actually it seems, I mean, a blink of an eye that we got the Amiga 500 after that. And there is a chance that I still have my 64 in the loft at my parents'. The original one is it the 1541? Is that the drive?
Yes.
Yeah. I think might be there with it. Possibly even the original discs, but I just don't know. It's funny, these things sort of.
Dave, this is really serious. Have a look at that attic and see if you can find the discs. The computer, that's fine. Keep it there, and also, I mean, monitors and everything. The discs, send them for preservation. Let me know, and we can have a chat afterward about that, because somebody would like to read those discs and see if there is anything that isn't available somewhere else. And it doesn't really matter how insignificant it might be to you. It might be significant to somebody else. There is a great community wanting to preserve every single byte before the disk rot eats everything.
If it hasn't gone already.
Well, I mean, these are super competent people extracting everything they can. They can cut it open and take the actual little metallic layer on plastic and put it in new sleeves and try to read it. So, I mean, we really care about every byte that was done back then. And I'm sure that there could be a few hidden gems in your store there.
You never know.
Super. Dave, this has been such a good day, and thank you for taking the time, and I'm looking forward to keeping in contact with you for the foreseeable future. And if you take the time to do anything else on the C64 ever, let me know before you let anybody else know, because there might be an updated legendary intro.
Good stuff. Yeah, well, look, I mean, as I said, thank you very much for contacting me. And you know, isn't it great that we got these things, these tools now that we didn't have, did we? In back in those days, social media, LinkedIn, and you know, I mean, I talk to my children now about you know how we used to have to go to the library to find information. You know, it's just a different world, isn't it?
And again, coming from the dark side, people abusing other people's credit cards for making international phone calls, and crappy from remote locations just so you couldn't be traced and exploited. And here we are conveniently chatting, and I can record it, and everything is just simple and for free.
Yeah, well, apart from the fact that we got to pay a provider for the internet connection.
Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, I don't pay any variable fee for this, at least. So
this is true. That's right. It doesn't matter where in the world, does it? Or sometimes for how long. Yeah. It again, you know, I was only recounting the other day my first connection on a BBS service, which was something I tried from home once.
Metered access, you block your phone, your parents go bonkers. I had friends, his mom, single mom, so and he was using the phone a lot, and the phone bill was absolutely humongous, and so we called him, and that doesn't cost him anything, but we just kept talking to ensure that eventually his mom would go bonkers and lift the other line and then go, "No, pal, you have to hang up, you have to hang up, this is expensive." That was our kind of fun on Fridays. So, well, Dave, again, thank you. I will ensure that this one will be brought to the general public, and I would like to see you subscribe to FairLight TV on YouTube, and then you can watch all the other episodes I have recorded,
I will have to
diving back into the C64 low-level hacking.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'll have a look at that. Yeah. So thanks very much, Pontus.
Thank you, Dave. All the best.
And you. Bye.
Bye.